Hello and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel in the first place. Today I'll be reading The Red Knight by cantletgangknow. They're on AO3, Tumblr, and TikTok. As always, links are in the description, and let's go ahead and get into it. The castle was louder than usual. Banners hung from every window, fluttering in the morning wind, and servants hurried through the halls carrying baskets of flowers that smelled too sweet to be real. You sat by the window of your chambers, chin propped against your hand, watching the chaos unfold in the courtyard below. The tournament was all anyone could talk about. A celebration, your father called it. A chance for the strongest knights in the kingdom to prove their valor. But to you, it felt more like a display of property. You were the prize. The thought made your stomach twist. When the door creaked open, you didn't even look up. "If that's another dress, I swear—" "It's not," came a familiar voice. "Unless you want me to pick one out for you." You turned your head, already smiling despite yourself. Kirishima stood in the doorway, his usual red surcoat slung over one arm, his long hair tied back. He looked far too cheerful for someone who had to stand guard through a week of tedious sword fights. "Morning, princess," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "You look thrilled about the tournament." "I'm ecstatic," you deadpanned, shutting the window. "Can't you tell?" He laughed, the sound warm and unbothered. "You know, most people would love a festival thrown in their honor. Most people aren't being auctioned off to the highest bidder in armor." "Fair point." He crossed the room, settling his surcoat aside. "Still, it's not all bad. You'll get to see some impressive fights." "I'd rather see the library." He grinned. "Dangerous place, that library. All those dusty scrolls and heavy tomes. You could get a paper cut." You shot him a look that only made him laugh harder. "Seriously, though?" he said after a moment, voice softening. "I get it. I know it's not fair." You looked away, tracing the embroidered edge of your sleeve. "My father thinks this will strengthen the kingdom. He doesn't see how it cheapens me." Kirishima's tone stayed gentle. "He's trying to protect you in his own way." "I don't need protection," you said quietly. "I need a choice." The silence that followed was heavier than usual. When you finally glanced up, Kirishima was smiling with that quiet kind of pride that made your chest ache. "You've got a strong heart," he said. "If I were one of those knights out there, I'd fight to prove I'm worthy of it." You blinked. "That's a very knightly thing to say." "It's almost like I am one," he joked, straightening as the bells began to ring outside. "Come on, the first round starts soon." He hadn't planned on entering. The idea hit him later that night, long after the first day of the tournament, and the halls had gone quiet. He stood in the armory alone, torchlight flickering over the rows of helmets and breastplates, the air thickened with oil and metal. He thought about the way she had looked earlier, frustrated, powerless, trying to mask it behind sarcasm. If he could give her even a fraction of the freedom she wanted, if he could win her hand by choice, not politics, then maybe it would mean something. He wasn't delusional. He knew how this worked. A guard had no business courting a princess. But as he looked at the crimson armor hanging in the corner, an old set with no crest or nameplate, he thought maybe, just once, I could try. The next morning, a new name appeared on the roster: the Red Knight. The tournament grounds were just as loud as the previous day, a blur of cheering drums and the sharp clang of metal. You sat in the royal box beside your father, trying to look interested while you waited for the first match of the day. Kirishima stood at his usual post behind your chair, silent but alert. When the first matches began, you found yourself sneaking glances back at him between rounds. He had caught your eye once and smiled reassuringly, like he could tell how tense you were. Another match in, and you were just about to make up some excuse to leave for a couple of minutes when the announcer's voice boomed across the field. Next match, the Red Knight. Your attention snapped forward. A figure stepped onto the field, clad in gleaming crimson plate, no insignia, no house colors. The crowd murmured, curious. His movements were steady, confident, not like the pompous nobles you'd seen before. He lowered his visor and drew his sword. You didn't know why, but your pulse quickened. You looked behind you to Kirishima, just to see him replaced with another knight standing guard. You asked your father about Kirishima's temporary placement. He had to do his rounds at the castle gates. He'll be back. You turned your attention back to the fight below, interest set back on the match. The Red Knight moved with precise, effortless strength. Not showy, just sure. When his opponent hit the ground, the crowd erupted. You realized you were smiling. Beside you, your father leaned forward impressed. A nameless knight winning his first match? Interesting. You nodded faintly, eyes still fixed on the crimson figure. He bowed to the royal box, to you, before turning to leave the field. Something about the gesture sent heat to your cheeks. A few minutes later, Kirishima returned. Hair somehow messier than before, he cleared his throat softly. Seems like that last one caught your eye, huh? You turned to glance back at him, flustered. He's skilled, that's all. His grin was small, careful. Yeah, seems like a good guy. Don't tell me you're jealous, you teased before you could stop yourself. He chuckled. Nah, just glad you're enjoying yourself, princess. You laughed under your breath, returning your gaze to the field as the next match began. Still, you couldn't help thinking about the nameless knight, about your unexplained interest in him. And somewhere behind you, Kirishima tried to steady his heartbeat, pretending not to notice the faint smile on your lips. The contenders had been narrowed down to 4 men, and the final day of the tournament was looming. At this point, the only 2 things keeping you from flinging yourself off the royal box were Kirishima, with his annoyingly bright smile and unwavering optimism, and the nameless knight who had stolen your attention since his first match. You were honestly surprised the council had even allowed a man to enter without giving his status, name, or noble ties. But you weren't complaining. The Red Knight was the only competitor worth watching. It was Friday evening now, the night before the final bout. The night before you were meant to become someone's fiancé. You had tried explaining to your father, repeatedly, that the entire idea of winning the princess made you feel like livestock at an auction, but he always returned the same line. Would you rather I arrange a marriage to a prince you despise, or allow a tournament so the man who wins your hand at least earns it? And you always shot back, you think I'm an object to be earned? He sighed every time. He knew it wasn't fair, but he also believed it was the best he could offer you, a compromise between duty and passion. Night, even the castle gardens couldn't drown out your frustration. Crickets chirped around you, the occasional frog croaked at your feet, and the tall grass brushed against your arms as you lay flat on your back, staring at the stars. The gardens were the only real sliver of freedom you ever got. You didn't lift your head when you heard footsteps approaching, heavy, familiar boots crushing the dewy grass. Princess, Kirishima called softly. I never thought I'd see the day where you'd manage to sneak away from me, and succeed. His tone was light-hearted, but you could hear the worry threaded underneath. You had probably given him a heart attack vanishing like that. When you didn't answer, he added, and here I thought I was the only person whose company you actually liked. You didn't smile. The stars held your attention in a way reality couldn't. The quiet exhale left him, and then the grass rustled as he eased down beside you, lying flat on his back, But unlike you, he wasn't watching the sky. He was watching you. He studied your profile, the way your brows pinched faintly with whatever emotion you refused to speak aloud. "Come on," he murmured. "What's wrong?" You finally glanced at him, just for a brief second before returning your gaze to the constellations. "It's just this whole situation," he swallowed. "I know it's normal for royalty to lose their say in marriage, but I can't help but wanting a choice. I barely ever get one." He nodded, humming in soft agreement. "If you could choose, who would it be?" The question slipped out before he could stop himself. "I don't know." You lied, but your mind went straight to him. The only man who made you feel human instead of holy. The only one who made your chest ache. The only one whose smile made you warm. Kirishima spoke again, voice gentler. "I know it's unfair. Gods, if I could give you a choice, I would. But I really do believe things will work out. Whoever wins, he's fighting for something important. That means something." You groaned, rolling onto your side to look at him fully. "Yeah, but what if he's fighting for my title instead of me?" This time, he tore his gaze away, staring up at the stars with a small smile tugging at his mouth. "Then I guess you'll just have to get lucky." You deadpanned. "You're too hopeful." You rolled onto your back again with a sigh. The two of you stayed there a long moment, the wind brushing through the trees above you. "I can't believe I'm going to be engaged tomorrow," you murmured. He laughed under his breath and sat up beside you. "It's crazy, right? Hey, maybe whoever wins will be handsome." You kicked at him lightly, unable to stop the smile forming. "As if that matters." His laugh echoed through the garden, brighter than the lanterns glowing around the castle walls. "Hey, it won't be all bad. I'll still be here." "Yeah, until my noble husband decides he hates our friendship," you said, sitting up beside him. Kirishima nudged your arm. "Positive thoughts. Who knows, maybe we'll be a trio." You snorted, shaking your head as you smiled. He always did this, pulled you back from your own spiraling thoughts with just being there. It was almost annoying how easily he could fix your mood. God forbid a girl want to be dramatic in peace. Morning arrived far too quickly. You barely slept, mind stuck between dread of the engagement and flashes of the red knight moving across the arena. When servants dressed you and escorted you to the royal box, the crowd was already roaring with anticipation. Kirishima stood behind you as always, his hands folded neatly behind his back, eyes alert, presence steady and warm. He looked normal, completely ordinary, which only made the Red Knight take up more space in your thoughts. "Only 2 matches left before the final," Kirishima murmured, leaning down slightly so only you could hear. "Feeling any better today?" "No," you said honestly. He snorted. "Fair." But something flickered across his face. Something tight. Something like resolve. Before you could question it, he straightened slightly. "Princess, I need to check with the guard captain before the match starts. I'll be right back." "Right now?" You frowned. "Yeah, just a minute." He flashed you his usual reassuring smile. "Don't worry, I'm not abandoning my post." You smiled. "Fine, just hurry." He jogged off, disappearing down the stairs. You didn't see the moment he broke into a sprint. His heart hammered across his ribs as he tore off the royal guard cloak. He didn't have time to overthink. He didn't have time to question how insane this was. All he knew was that you deserved a choice, and if he couldn't give you one as your knight, he would give you one as a contender. The armor of the Red Knight waited where he had hidden it the night before. He pulled on the helmet last, swallowing a breath. For her. Then he ran. You tried to ignore the restless feeling in your chest. Kirishima still hadn't returned. The announcer stepped forward, projecting his voice across the arena. Next match, Sir Aldrin of Cindervale versus the mysterious Red Knight. The crowd erupted. The Red Knight stepped into the sunlight, armor glowing like a living flame. Tall, broad-shouldered, purposeful, his movements were sure, powerful, and almost familiar, though you brushed that thought away immediately, leaning forward unconsciously. His opponent swung first, his attacks heavy, brutal, and careless. The Red Knight dodged cleanly, pivoting with a fluidity that you had never seen in any other fighter. His counter-strike landed with force, sending Sir Alden stumbling. The match ended in a single, decisive clash. Aldrin hit the ground. The Red Knight's blade hovered at his throat. The crowd roared. You couldn't breathe. When the dust settled and attendants helped remove the falling knight, the Red Knight raised his sword to the crowd in salute. And just like that, he was gone, striding off the field, leaving a wake of whispers and awe. Moments later, "I'm back," Kirishima said, a little breathless. You whipped around. "Kiri, where in the world were you?" "Captain Business," he said with an easy grin, though a bead of sweat slid down his neck. "Did I miss anything cool?" "Actually, yes," you huffed. "The Red Knight fought again, and he won, super fast." "Yeah?" he asked, trying and failing to hide how pleased he sounded. "Was it impressive?" You rolled your eyes at his eager tone. "Ridiculously. He's different from the others." "Different good?" Kirishima asked carefully. You hesitated. "Yes." His ears turned faintly pink. Hours passed. The last two contenders were declared. Sir Garrick of Hollamore and the Red Knight. This match determined your engagement. Your stomach twisted. The arena fell silent as the two knights faced one another. Garrick was skilled, deadly even. His strikes were vicious, fueled by arrogance. The Red Knight parried each one with strength and precision, but Garrick was relentless, landing a brutal blow to the Red Knight's shoulder that made you flinch. The Red Knight stumbled. Garrick raised his weapon for a finishing blow, but something in the Red Knight snapped. He surged upward with a roar of effort, blocking the strike, pushing Garrick back, step by step. The crowd rose to their feet, steel clashed again and again, until the Red Knight disarmed Garrick in a single sweeping arc. Garrick fell to his knees. The arena shook with cheers. The Red Knight had won. You were engaged to him, whoever he was. Your father stood, lifting his hand for silence. "Remove your helmet, champion, and show the kingdom the man to whom my daughter is promised." The Red Knight hesitated, and your heartbeat thundered. Slowly, he lifted the helmet. Gasps echoed through the court. Red hair spilled out first, then familiar crimson eyes, then a smile, soft and nervous. "Kirishima?" you breathed, barely audible. You were so fixated on the final match that you didn't even notice he was gone from his post behind you. He knelt on one knee, head bowed. "Forgive me, your majesty," he said to your father, "but I couldn't let your daughter's fate be decided by men who don't know her, men who don't deserve her." The court erupted with scandalized whispers. You stood, frozen. Your father's jaw clenched. "You deceived the royal house. You broke your station." "And I'd do it again," Kirishima said, voice steady and full of fire. "For her." Gasps rippled again. Your father stepped forward livid. You overstep! You interrupted without thinking, heart racing. Stop, please. He fought fairly, he won fairly, and... Your voice wavered. And I would choose him. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Your father looked between you and Kirishima, conflict cracking across his stern expression. Finally, very well. You nearly collapsed in relief. Your father pointed a warning finger at Kirishima. But one step out of line, and the wedding is off. Kirishima blushed so hard it nearly reached his ears. Yes, your majesty. Your father turned to leave, muttering in disapproval. The moment he was gone, the court broke into an uproar, servants scrambling, nobles gossiping. You ran down from the royal box, joining him down in the arena. You and Kirishima stood frozen, inches apart and grins on your faces. You both leaned in, drawn like gravity, but a loud clearing of your father's throat from across the arena made you jump apart. Kirishima flinched back. Sorry. You clapped a hand over your face, mortified. He smiled awkwardly, bashful and red as his hair. Later that evening, after the chaos faded, you slipped away to the empty armory. Rows of weapons glinted in torchlight, and the Red Knight's armor lay carefully arranged on a bench. Kirishima was there, half out of the armor, sitting with his elbows on his knees. He looked up when you entered. Hey, he said softly. Hey. You walked toward him, each step slow. He stood as you approached, unsure and full of hope he was trying to desperately conceal. You stopped inches from him. You fought for me, you whispered. I'd fight every army in every kingdom for you, he replied instantly, no hesitation at all. You lifted your hand, brushing his cheek. He leaned into the touch like he'd been starving for it. He swallowed. Are you sure? About me? You smiled, small and full of warmth. I've never been more sure. He let out a shaky breath, like someone exhaling a lifetime of wanting. Slowly, reverently, he rested his forehead against yours. May I kiss you? He whispered. You whispered back. Yes. And in the quiet glow of torchlight, surrounded by steel, shadows, and the remnants of his secret, Kirishima kissed you for the very first time. It was soft, trembling, and full of everything he had never been allowed to say until now. The kingdom had settled, not into quiet, never that, but into something steadier, less frantic, less uncertain. The months following the tournament had been filled with rebuilding, negotiations, preparations, and 1,000 whispered opinions about the man who would soon stand beside the future queen. And at the center of it all was Kirishima. He still woke before dawn out of habit, even though his days no longer began with patrol routes or training drills. Instead, they began with tutors, stewards, and your father's relentless expectations. He no longer stood outside your chamber door at night. That position now belonged to another knight. Polite, efficient, silent. He bowed to you with practiced respect, never joked, never leaned casually against the wall, never asked you if you had eaten yet. You missed the sound of boots you recognized, and the change had been your father's decision. Appropriate, he said. Necessary. Kirishima was no longer just a knight of the guard. He was the future consort of the heir. His role had shifted, whether either of you liked it or not, and it weighed on him. Your days were filled with preparations you trained for your entire life. Councils, correspondence, Trade discussions, ceremonial expectations. It was exhausting, yes, but familiar. You watched him now from the far end of your long dining hall, chin resting in your palm as he sat painfully upright at the table, back rigid, eyes focused with the same intensity he once reserved for combat. The tutor circled him like a hawk. Spine straight, elbows in, nobility does not slouch. Kirishima immediately corrected himself, but messed up again by daring to hold his knife in his left hand. Knife in the right hand, the tutor corrected. Kirishima stiffened. Right, sorry, right. He adjusted, only to immediately forget himself and reach for a roll with his fingers. You bit back a laugh. He had faced monsters, duels, death itself, yet table manners seemed to be his greatest enemy. Your father, seated at the head of the table, cleared his throat. Kirishima froze like a man facing execution. Use the fork, your father said flatly. Yes, sir. You finally lost the battle and laughed softly into your sleeve. Kirishima glanced up, caught your eye, and mouthed, I hate this. You only smiled back, fond and entirely unhelpful. Gods, you loved him. He lived in the castle now, not as your knight, not as your husband, yet, but as something in between. Your father had assigned him chambers in the East Wing, comfortable, well furnished, and very much separate from yours. The rule was clear, spoken once and never again. Appearances matter. You didn't complain. You understood the politics of it. That didn't make the distance easier, though. You passed each other in hallways instead of sharing late-night conversations. He bowed where he used to grin. He stood beside you during formal events, close enough to feel his warmth, but not close enough to touch. And every time you left his side, another knight stepped in to guard you. You noticed how Kirishima's jaw tightened every time. It was subtle at first, the way his gaze lingered on the knight now assigned to you, the way he positioned himself just slightly closer than etiquette required, the way his hands curled into fists when you disappeared behind heavy doors. One afternoon, as you walked through the gallery, you caught him watching from across the room, eyes sharp with something dangerously close to fear. Later, you found him in the courtyard, staring at the training grounds like he was homesick. You're allowed to breathe, you told him, gently approaching. He startled, then relaxed when he saw it was you. I know. You've been tense all day. He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't like not being the one guarding you. Your chest tightened. I know the knight they assigned you is capable, he continued quickly, and I trust him. Really, I do. It's just... He stopped, exhaling sharply. It's hard to turn that part of my brain off. He stepped closer. You don't have to protect me every second. I know, he said quietly, but I want to. The words sat between you, heavy and sincere. That night, you escaped. The castle gardens were cool and quiet, moonlight silvering the grass. You lay among the flowers, staring up at the stars like you used to, like nothing had changed. Footsteps approached. You didn't look. Well, Kirishima said softly, this feels familiar. Sorry, you murmured. He sighed and lowered himself beside you, careful, respectful, but his eyes weren't on the sky, they were on you. You've been quiet, he said. That usually means something is wrong. You swallowed. I could say the same about you. He huffed out a small laugh. Guess we're both bad liars. The breeze stirred the trees above you. Crickets sang. You turned on your side, facing him. You look exhausted. He smiled. Is it that obvious? You're learning how to be a noble, a consort, a future king, all at once. Anyone would be tired. He laughed weakly. I used to think sword drills were brutal. You hesitated, then reached to play with a loose strand of his hair, voice dropping. You should come to my chambers tonight. His breath caught. What? You can climb, you added, smiling sweetly. You're still a knight after all. When he arrived later, slipping in through the balcony doors with all the grace of someone who had done this 100 times before, you were already waiting. He kicked off his boots quietly and collapsed onto the edge of your bed with a long sigh. I love you, he said immediately, like it was the only thing holding him together. You joined him, hands cupping his face. I know. He gave you a look when you didn't say it back, making you laugh. I love you too. He sat up, arm wrapping around your waist and pulling you against him. He buried his face into your shoulder, voice muffled. I miss it. Being a knight, fighting, protecting people with my body instead of posture and etiquette. You ran your fingers through his hair. You're still protecting me. He looked up. I am. You chose me, you said simply. That matters more than any title. His eyes softened, leaning into your hands that held his face. Then you kissed him. It was slow at first, careful, reverent, his other hand hovering at your waist, unsure. Then you kissed him again, harder. His breath stuttered, hands finally settling against you like he was grounding himself. The kiss deepened, months of restraint unraveling all at once. His mouth was warm, desperate, familiar in a way that made your knees weak. You're gonna be the death of me, he murmured against your lips. You smiled, pulling him closer. You'll survive. He laughed softly and kissed you again, longer this time. His hand slid up your back, fingers digging in just enough to make your breath hitch. Somewhere between kisses, he rested his forehead against yours. I'm trying so hard to do this right. I know, you whispered. I see it. He swallowed. I miss being your knight. You kissed his jaw, his cheek. You're still mine. That broke something in him. You ended up being pinned beneath him without quite remembering how. He kneeled between your parted legs. His hands were warm, steady, resting on your thighs like he was afraid to move too fast. He exhaled shakily. So, are we really waiting for the wedding night to, He laughed quietly. To consummate? His ears went red. Yeah, that. I don't care about that rule, you admitted. He groaned, tipping his head back. Yeah, but I swear your dad will just know. You snorted. He's not magic. Kirishima squinted. Are you sure? You draped your arms around his neck, laughing into his shoulder. He smiled, kissing your temple, then your neck. The world narrowed to breath and warmth and hands exploring what they already knew. The candles burned lower. The door stayed shut. The weeks that followed felt lighter. Lessons continued. Expectations remained, but the weight had shifted, shared now instead of borne alone. When the wedding day arrived, it felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. The bells rang before the sun fully rose. Not the sharp, urgent peal of alarm or summons, but slow, deliberate tolls that rolled across the kingdom like a promise being kept. You stood before the tall mirror in your chambers, hands folded in your lap, as attendants made final adjustments to your gown. Ivory silk fell in soft layers, embroidered faintly with lilies along the hem. Your hair was braided back simply, crowned not with gold but with a circlet of silver. The queen's crown would come later. This was not about power. This was about choice. Your wedding wasn't just for love. It was setting an example of freedom. When the doors opened and the music began, the noise of the world fell away. The aisles stretched long before you, lined with nobles, knights, and citizens alike. Faces blurred together, but you saw him immediately. Kirishima stood at the altar, dressed in ceremonial crimson and white, the colors of your house woven subtly into his attire. He stood straighter than you had ever seen him, shoulders squared, hands steady, but his eyes softened the moment they met yours. He smiled, not the grin he wore in battle, not the polite one he had learned for court, the one only meant for you. You walked toward him with steady steps, heartful and unafraid. Your father presided over the ceremony himself. His voice carried clearly, strong and sure, as he spoke of unity, devotion, and the sacred weight of choosing one another. When he turned to Kirishima, his gaze sharpened, not with distrust, but expectation. "You were not born to this," your father said. "Yet you stand here by right of courage, honor, and love. Do you swear to protect my daughter, not as her shield, but as her equal?" Kirishima didn't hesitate. "I do," he said firmly, "with my life if needed, but always with her consent." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Your father turned to you next, eyes gentler. "And do you take him, not as a knight sworn to you, but as a man who chose you freely?" He smiled. "I do," he said, "every day." When your hands were joined, Kirishima's thumb brushed your knuckles, a grounding touch, familiar and warm. The crowns were blessed, the vows sealed, and when your father finally spoke the words that mattered most, "You may kiss," Kirishima leaned in slowly, giving you time to pull away. You didn't. The kiss was soft, reverent, and unhurried, a promise, not a spectacle. The kingdom erupted in cheers. The feast followed, grand and glowing, but the moment you had been waiting for came when the music changed. The first dance. Kirishima led you to the floor, fingers lacing with yours. "No pressure," he murmured, "only the entire kingdom watching." You smiled. "You trained for this." He smirked. "And suffered." He moved with confidence now, his steps precise, posture perfect, guiding you through the dance with practiced ease. The months of lessons showed in every turn, every careful lead, but what mattered wasn't the skill, it was the way he looked at you, like this was all he had ever wanted, like every path he had walked had led him here. When the music faded, he leaned close and whispered, "I'd do it all again." You squeezed his hand. "I know." The bells rang one last time, low, steady, content. Not an ending, but a beginning. Alright, that's the end of this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, links are in the description, including one to submit fanfic recommendations. The author might be writing a part 2 of this one, and if they do, I will definitely be reading it, so go check the author out. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, whatever, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!